In today's episode, we do a full preview of this weekend's NFL draft and tell you everything you need to know about what to expect for the Eagles in this draft. I'm Austin Bennett, and this is the Philly Cheese Take.
Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Philly Cheese Take. Today is one of my favorite days in the sports calendar. It is NFL Draft Night, one of the most exciting off-season events of any sport, I believe. And let's hop into what to expect in tonight's events. There's a consensus as of late among analysts about who are going to be the top three picks in this draft. We've got Cam Ward going number 1 overall to the Titans, quarterback out of Miami. Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, going 2nd overall to the Browns. And then Abdul Carter rounding things off at the 3rd pick to the Giants. That's kind of the consensus among analysts, but there's still a chance that some of that gets shaken up. Really, the only surefire pick among those three is Cam Ward going number 1 overall to the Titans. It's interesting seeing just how social media continues to be a factor in predicting these draft outcomes each year. This season, we saw live streams by Cam Ward, him playing Fortnite, revealing how locked in he and the Titans were at the number 1 pick. Very interesting stuff, but I think it's gotten to the point where you can't even bet on that pick. It's so guaranteed that it's going to be Cam Ward. But after that, it's kind of still up in the air. Travis Hunter is the kind of logical pick at 2nd to the Browns, bolster the defense, give a potential offensive weapon if they decide to use him on both sides of the football. And then obviously you're bringing in the Heisman Trophy winner. And then things really start to get shaky at number 3 with the Giants. The concept is to draft Abdul Carter, and we're going to talk more about him later in the show, as well as just this 3rd pick by the Giants overall and what it could mean for the Eagles, believe it or not. But there started to be some inklings about Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss, potentially being a target as early as 3rd overall for the Giants, which would be interesting. I don't think it would be as much of a reach as, say, Daniel Jones was in 2019. However, it is still a new development, and the news surrounding Jackson Dart and kind of the hype surrounding Jackson Dart as of late has forced Shedeur Sanders down draft boards as well. He was once kind of at even odds for the 8th or 9th overall pick in the draft. Now his average odds are in the 20s if you're betting on the draft. I don't suggest doing that, but sportsbooks are a decent measurement stick for what to expect in terms of outcomes of sports events. There are people who get paid a lot of money to come up with those odds, and for good reason. They kind of have a sense of what's going on. So Shedeur Sanders' draft stock is completely tanking, and I think it does have a bit of direct relation to the hype that has started surrounding Jackson Dart. We've also heard out of New Orleans, the concept there is that if Jackson Dart is available at the number 9 pick, the Saints will take him. So a lot of developments from throughout the league surrounding the quarterback out of Ole Miss. Another interesting storyline to watch tonight is where Boise State phenom Ashton Jancy will land. He was the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy winner, finished, I believe, top 5 all-time in single-season rushing yards in college football history. Some people said that he deserved the Heisman Trophy over Travis Hunter, and that Travis Hunter was only getting it because he was capable of playing on both sides of the ball. That's still an argument to this day. I personally don't think that the Heisman Committee got it wrong. However, Ashton Jancy is very talented, and some mock drafts have him going as early as top 5 tonight. Give some credit to Saquon Barkley for all of these developments. Honestly, he has reinvented the running back market, both in terms of what contracts athletes can expect, but also where they could be drafted. People really held their nose towards Bijan Robinson and other prospects in recent years, not because they weren't capable players, but because there was this just notion among the league that you shouldn't draft running backs early, and you certainly shouldn't pay them after their rookie contract. But Saquon Barkley is really proving a lot of NFL owners wrong. But at the same time, I don't want to overlook the other cast members that play a role in all of that. You got to give credit as well to the offensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles and other teams where they have successful running games, because you can't do it alone. That was why Saquon Barkley kept getting hurt in New York and why he wasn't able to experience as much success in New York as he did in Philadelphia. You have to have the supporting cast, and really, teams should build the supporting cast first. You do that before bringing in the star players, and that's how you build a championship team. Howie Roseman has proved that now with 2 Super Bowl victories and the same blueprint for each of them. Another interesting note on the topic of offensive lines and running games, I saw a statistic the other day, passing to rushing ratio for each team in the NFL last season. And there was a trend among the top 5 teams in terms of what percentage of plays were rushing and what percentage of plays were passing. The top 5 teams in rushing percentage all made the playoffs last season. On the other hand, the top 5 teams who passed the ball at the highest rate last season all missed the playoffs. So really, football as of late has kind of been flipped on its head as far as offensive game plans, and the ground and pound game is back, and last season proved that. The leaders in each of those categories, the Eagles, to no shock, were the team that ran the ball the most in terms of, percentage of total plays, and the Bengals on the other side of things, they passed the ball at the largest percentage, and they had one of the most famous playoff misses of all time. I feel like you have an MVP contender at quarterback. Your offense is averaging what felt like 30 points a game, and yet you couldn't even make the playoffs. Now let's talk about the Eagles. Enough talk about the draft as a whole. Let's focus in on our birds. We've got pick number 32 in this year's first round of the NFL draft because, of course, we are Super Bowl champions. It's the best pick you want to have. In terms of the full amount of picks that the Eagles have to use this year, on top of the 32nd pick, we've got pick number 64, last pick in the second round. Same trend with the third round, pick number 96, the last in that round. I believe there's some supplemental picks after that, though. Fourth round, we've got the 134 pick, and then we've got 4 picks in the fifth round, pick 161, 164, 165, and 168. Here's what I expect to happen within this draft for the Eagles. There's going to be at least one trade involving this year's picks. That I can absolutely, without a doubt, guarantee. Adam Schefter has even said there's a pretty solid chance that at least 2 trades occur within this draft weekend involving the Eagles. I also expect Dallas Goedert to continue to be shopped around heavily. I was more confident going into this just a few weeks ago that he was going to get traded on draft night. However, as the clock ticks down and less rumors come out, I'm not as certain about that, but I do still think at some point he's going to be dealt from this team. And I think part of that will be because of the approach that they take in terms of who they pick over these next couple of days. I think a tight end will be involved in that. And one other thing that I just want to shut down completely right now, because even though I believe analysts Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport and other guys, they've already come out here and said A.J. Brown is not on the trade market. Even though they've said that, people still keep running with this idea like he's being shopped around and that he's available tonight. That's a ridiculous concept. Not only are the Eagles unwilling to trade him, they cannot, in the system given, trade him away. The cap hit would be unfathomable. It would be crippling to this franchise that is gearing up for a chance at back-to-back Super Bowl championships. This team is not in rebuild mode. They're not in reset mode. They're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. They believe they have a blueprint that they can carry over from last season and continue to have success with. And I don't think they're wrong in thinking that one bit. The concept of A.J. Brown being traded anywhere is ridiculous. I can't name one person in this draft that is worthy of the Eagles trading A.J. Brown for. There's not a single player on this draft board that I would give up A.J. Brown for. And that's saying something because I think very highly of a lot of people in this draft. However, none of them are worthy of trading A.J. Brown for. It's a ridiculous thing. Anyways, let's talk about the player visits that the Eagles conducted. Every NFL team gets to visit 30 players leading into the draft and get to meet with them one-on-one, learn a little bit more about them, maybe share the playbook, things of that nature. And historically, this has been great insight into who the Eagles will actually end up taking in the draft. A lot of times, the people that they meet over the spring are the people they end up taking on the stage in April. In terms of projected first rounders, the list is there's more players than this, but these are the notable ones if you ask me. Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. Walter Nolan, defensive lineman out of Ole Miss. Josh Connerly, offensive tackle out of Oregon. He actually started playing football as a running back. You know how the Eagles feel about speedy linemen on both sides of the ball. Donovan Eziruka, defensive edge out of Boston College. And finally, Nick Scourton, defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. That name specifically was the one that a lot of people were running with as the Eagles' first-round pick very early in mock drafts. As of lately, it's been a lot more muddied around him. But those are all guys that the Eagles have spoken to and spent time with and have shown a public interest in terms of projected first-rounders. As we move down in the draft board in the second round, Maxwell Harrison is another player that the Eagles have met with. He's a corner out of Kentucky, and he has appeared in some round one mock drafts. I was looking on Pro Football Focus. They actually had the Eagles in one mock draft taking Maxwell Harrison at pick 32 in the first round. So he's kind of a fringe first-round pick. Another fringe first-round pick is Donovan Jackson, offensive lineman out of Ohio State. And then the other projected second rounder that the Eagles met with is TJ Sanders, defensive tackle out of South Carolina. He's a guy who really excelled academically, and that's another thing that we've seen Howie Roseman and his front office really value, drafting geniuses and guys like Nolan Smith. They liked how academic success correlates to team chemistry and kind of locker room impact, and TJ Sanders could definitely be a guy that kind of fits into that blueprint. Moving on to the third round, I have one of the biggest steals, I think, in the draft, one that I've pinned on my board, Jacob Parrish, corner out of Kansas State. If this guy's available at pick 96, I think he is a must pick for the Eagles, and I think they're thinking along the same lines. Because they've met with him. One of the 30 players was him. He ran a 4.35 40-yard dash, and the whole concept is you draft him and you line him up alongside Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, and you have one of the youngest secondaries in the entire league. I would love that pick. I would absolutely love it. I think he's one of the most athletically capable players amongst all defensive prospects in this entire draft. And if he's available at 96, he's a must get, in my opinion. Moving on down the draft board even lower, we've seen the Eagles meet with players like Jaden Blue, running back out of Texas. I think he could be a solid fourth-round pick. I would not be very surprised if the Eagles go with running back in this draft, even though we drafted Will Shipley last year and we saw some good flashes from him in the past season, and we even signed A.J. Dillon from the Green Bay Packers. Listen, the Eagles are no strangers to a 5 running back roster. That was actually the roster concept that the Eagles ran with in 2018 when they won the Super Bowl. I don't think it's crazy to say that they draft another running back in this draft and run with a 5 running back roster. Listen, it's no guarantee that A.J. Dillon is good to go next season. There's a lot of injury concerns with him. He's got some sort of neck issue with his nerves, and there is a small chance with how small his contract was that they signed him purely as a tush-push down player, a fourth down player, a guy who they just end up putting behind Jalen Hurts every time they go for a quarterback sneak because of his leg strength. He might not be a guy that really sees any yards from scrimmage in the next season at all. And if that's the case, even more so reason why they would go running back in this year's draft. So I think Jaden Blue, a great prospect out of Texas, really didn't get enough room to shine during his time there because of guys around him like Bijan Robinson. Injury history, I think, also kind of hindered him there, and could have got a chance to shine in Philadelphia. I think he would be a decent replacement for Kenneth Gainwell, who you lost in free agency this offseason. And then in the later rounds, two more player visits that really stood out to me, and they stood out to me because of bias, I'll be honest of that. But Jalen Reed, safety out of Penn State, and Kobe King, linebacker out of Penn State. You see the theme already. Both came from Pennsylvania State University. That is the team that I root for each Saturday. They are my favorite college football team. But I truly believe that these guys can play and have the talent that can carry over into Sundays with success. And I would be ecstatic if they draft either of them. And at the end of the day, we have 4 fifth-round picks this season. Might as well use 1 or 2 of them on a hometown guy like Reed or King. Now, do I think that we end up keeping and using all 4 fifth-round picks in this draft? Absolutely not. I know Howie Roseman too well to truly believe that. He's going to package them away and craft up some sort of magic that lands a superstar out of nowhere, because that's just who Howie Roseman is. But if they end up picking just one of these guys in the late rounds, I'd be very happy personally as a Penn State and Eagles fan. Another name that has been tied to the Eagles as of late that did not meet among the 30 players with the Eagles is Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. He's a linebacker, and kind of going into this NFL offseason, he was a consensus top 15 talent within this draft, but he recently underwent shoulder surgery, so that could get him to fall to pick 32 for the Eagles, and he could end up as the first-round pick. And it would end up being another kind of Nakobe Dean-esque situation where you have this first-round talent out of a big-name SEC school that you know that the Eagles have ties to, and because of an injury, he just falls into the Eagles' lap. Would not be totally upset with that pick, but I do think there's some names that, if available as well, kind of get priority over him, and I'm going to talk about those guys in just a moment. I do want to visit back to that Giants pick, though, pick number 3 in this draft, because I do think it could have some implications on what the Eagles do tonight, believe it or not. I believe there is a serious chance that the Eagles trade down out of the first round in order for a team that is in need of a quarterback to jump up and select one. Now, the last time that this occurred also happened when the Eagles won the Super Bowl and got pick number 32. I want to take you back to the 2018 NFL Draft. All right, Eagles had 32nd overall pick. They traded it away to the Baltimore Ravens and allowed the Ravens to select Heisman Trophy winner Lamar Jackson, who has since become a multiple-time MVP and obvious franchise player. Now, this is just a theory. There's nothing out there that really proves that this is a fact, but I think in hindsight, it's really kind of clear what Howie Roseman was on the lines of thinking about when he made that move to trade out of the first round. I truly believe this. I truly believe that he had such a wide perspective on the draft field that season that he recognized that the Giants went running back with Saquon Barkley at pick number 2 in that draft, and we're going to need a quarterback to draft to be able to learn behind Eli Manning in that upcoming season, and that they were going to do that at pick number 34. And recognizing that, and recognizing that Lamar Jackson had a ton of talent, regardless of whether or not he would transfer as an NFL quarterback, because that was still kind of up in arms at the time, I think he saw that threat and purposefully orchestrated the deal with the team that he knew would select a quarterback at pick 32, allowed them to jump ahead of the Giants and steal a quarterback from him. Ultimately, that's exactly what happened. The Ravens picked the Heisman Trophy winner in Lamar Jackson, preventing the Giants from getting him at 34, regardless of whether or not they would have drafted him. And then what happened the next season? 2019 NFL Draft, the Giants are then absolutely forced to take a quarterback, and they end up making one of the biggest reaches in NFL draft history and drafting a quarterback out of Duke with the 6th overall pick, a guy by the name of Daniel Jones. We all know how that story ends, and I truly believe we could see history repeat itself tonight. If the Giants do not go quarterback with the 3rd overall pick, their next pick in this draft is none other than pick number 34, the 2nd pick in the 2nd round, and the Eagles sit at pick 32, 2 spots ahead, identical to the 2018 draft. And if the Giants do not select a quarterback at number 3, I think that Howie Roseman will immediately be on the phone lines trying to work a deal with teams that end up passing on a quarterback with their first round pick in this draft, but then want to select one at 32 in a way to kind of deliberately orchestrate a quarterback being held out of New York by trading with a QB needy team at 32 and preventing him from going to the Giants at 34. And I truly believe that there's a chance for that. I mean, we know Cam Ward's going to be off the list at number 1 to the Titans, but then there are plenty of talented, capable quarterbacks who are first-round prospects that we have no idea where they're going to fall in this draft. Jackson Dart, who we talked about, Shadur Sanders, who we talked about, Tyler Show, who has gotten a lot of interest lately out of Louisville, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, and then you've even got more notable quarterbacks like Will Howard and Quinn Ewers, who did really well in college football that scouts are kind of worried about how they'll translate into the NFL, but still viable draft options available as well. We have no idea how the draft will trend this season. We saw a lot of quarterbacks go earlier than expected last year. That could be the case again this year, and teams might get frantic. They might want a chance at another first-round pick later in the draft tonight, and they might just orchestrate something with the Eagles to get that done and to prevent the Giants from drafting one of those names I just mentioned. That's just something interesting to watch. I saw kind of the stars aligning and history beginning to repeat itself just with the positioning of the draft. So there could be a storyline that comes back up tonight that'll be interesting to watch out for. Finally, I want to leave you all with my personal thoughts and predictions in tonight's draft, both about the Eagles and beyond. The first thing I want to lay out, and I am so confident about this, Abdul Carter is and will be the best player in this draft, without a doubt. I understand the comparison is right there. Micah Parsons, both edge rushers that graduated from Penn State and were top picks in the draft. But Abdul Carter got more time to develop as an edge rusher in college than Micah Parsons did. And I honestly believe that there's a chance that he is a more gifted athletic talent than Micah Parsons is. And I know that's insane to say, but this dude has the potential to go down as one of the greatest edge rushers in NFL history. I don't think that's too ridiculous to say. I know part of the foundation I built with this show is to avoid the hot takes and the controversial opinions to try to, go viral or get clips out of. I'm seriously not trying to do that here. I understand I have some bias as a Penn State fan, but at the same time, I've watched a heck of a lot of Penn State football, and I'm telling you, this guy is unlike anything I've ever seen before. I mean, just go back, watch the playoffs, with the understanding that he was attacking those quarterbacks with only really one useful arm and was still absolutely dominating future NFL talent. He's going to be the best player to come out of this draft without a doubt. Also, anyone who drafts Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks, or Mike Green in the first round of this draft immediately won the draft. I believe these guys are going to be fantastic talents into the NFL. Jalen Walker and Malachi Starks are from Georgia. Mike Green, you may not know him. He's an edge rusher out of Marshall. This is a very defensive-heavy draft. A ton of defensive talent. But I think that these names are the ones that stand out the most. I think the teams that take these guys instantly get B+ grades or higher in this draft, regardless of who else they take. I will mention, there is a small chance that Malachi Starks and or Mike Green are available at the 32nd pick for the Eagles. If that's the case, Eagles need to draft them without hesitation. Throw out all the other guys that they met with among those 30 visits. If Starks or Green are available in that order, pick them. Malachi Starks did meet with the Eagles. He was one of the 30 guys, so that one's kind of already there and obvious. But if Mike Green is available, take him as well. Another opinion of mine, the Eagles should, in fact, trade Dallas Goedert this weekend. I'm not really concerned about what they get from it. It's just time to go. I've seen the regression over the past few years. I think the one that stands out to me that most people might not see on Sundays is his effort in run blocking over the past few years has entirely deteriorated. Now, that might have been the strategic thing to try to avoid injuries because that's become an issue as well over the last couple of seasons. But nonetheless, I can't stand it much longer. I appreciate everything that he brought to this team. I appreciate the impact that he had. I mean, he made memorable moments from the second that he was drafted. Obviously, he didn't do that. It was David Akers on stage trolling Cowboys fans. But nonetheless, he's contributed a ton to this team, and I'm grateful for it. But at the same time, he's not going to be re-signed. And I want the Eagles to be able to get as much value out of players as possible. And at this point, I think the most value you get out of Dallas Goedert is future compensation. Now, once that's taken care of and he is traded, I would like the Eagles to draft Harold Fannin Jr. out of Boston College. He finished, I believe, with the most receiving yards among all tight ends last season in college football, and was kind of right side by side with Tyler Warren out of Penn State for the best tight end in the country. The only concern for him, and the reason why he's so much lower on the boards compared to Tyler Warren, is that blocking is a huge concern for him. I mean, I've never seen a tackling sled shed a player before I watched Harold Fannin Jr. in the combine. You can search that video up on YouTube or Twitter. It is quite bizarre. I mean, the sled shed the block from the human being. It's unheard of, especially at the pro level. So that's a huge concern. But at the same time, who do the Eagles have in their coaching staff? Jeff Stoutland, the guy who could teach a 4-year-old how to block a defensive lineman. I mean, this guy can turn anybody into an all-star, and I think he could do just that with Harold Fannin Jr. You pair him up over the summer, and that blocking issue is no longer a concern. I would love for the Eagles to pick him in the 3rd round. Last thing I'll say is that the Eagles need to go offensive line at some point in this draft, preferably within the first 3 rounds. Plenty of good prospects out of Oregon, Texas, Ohio State. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter who. I would like a tackle to be able to be built into the system and eventually be set to replace Lane Johnson because the clock is ticking on that chapter for the Eagles, and I think they know it. I expect Howie Roseman to do it. That's been his kind of game plan always. He's never afraid to draft an offensive lineman. And in fact, I can't think of the last draft where he didn't draft a lineman. And I think that trend kind of continues here. Last thing I'm going to say non-Eagles related before wrapping up this episode. My final thought, and this one I'll admit, it is a hot take, but I'm not trying to go viral for it. My hot take is that Dillon Gabriel will be the biggest quarterback steal from this draft. Quarterback out of Oregon. I think the only concern there is age. But Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, all those guys are starting to throw that concept out the window. And I think that Dillon Gabriel truly can translate to NFL talent a lot more so than other guys being talked about like Will Howard and Quinn Ewers. So that's my kind of hot take revisit in a couple of years. Dillon Gabriel, biggest quarterback steal out of this draft. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys. Enjoy the draft tonight. We're going to be back on Sunday, hours after the draft ends, to revisit and review all the news that occurred over the weekend, give each team a grade, especially our Eagles, and talk about what to expect as we move on to OTAs and practice in just a few months. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to leave a rating or a comment. Let me know what you enjoyed, what things I could potentially incorporate or improve. God bless, and I'll see you next episode.